Welcome, 5 bets in 5 minutes. NFL version, Thursday night football version. Let me give Jalen some room here. This is it, man. Phillies are cooked. You're it. You're the only hope we have here in Philadelphia, young man, to go out there and do something special. How about just beat Houston? Like you're the very first option we have and last option now to beat Houston on a Thursday night. And with that said, let's make some money, shall we? 5 bets in 5 minutes here on the Odd Shopper channel. What does that mean? The video is longer than that, right? But we do this segment. I'm going to run the clock. We'll bang through them, and then I'll tell you about some other stuff, including another big hit on the Discord. Now, I'm going to ask you to do some stuff, so here's a free play for you right away. Now, the caveat is always that if you see Ben Raza or Matt Gajewski go against any of these free plays that I'll throw out there for you, as I ask you to hit the thumbs up button, to subscribe and be part of the Odd Shopper channel, to take advantage of what we have below. $5 on any pregame money line. So let me show you here what that means. This is a $5 wager on Coastal Carolina. If they win, it turns into $200. All right. So the easier thing to do would be to bet Rice, a heavier favorite at minus 175, or rather Duke at minus 360, if you like, or rather UConn over Ben Raza's UMass Minutemen at minus 730, because that $5 bet at minus 730, just sign up right now at DraftKings. The link is below. If you haven't already, put $5 in, bet on UConn right away, minus 730. That's going to turn into $200. Okay. It's that simple. Now, let's stretch out. Let's get going. Let me slouch again. And let's start the clock. 5 minutes, 5 bets in 5 minutes starts right now. We begin Thursday night football, of course, in the first quarter here. I'm going to take the Texans. First off, let's get this Coastal shit out of here. Houston Texans +3 even money only in the first. Only in Houston. Why? Because it's a short week. And because you, the public, you love to hammer favorites no matter how wide that spread is. It can't be juicy enough. So the Philadelphia Eagles are going to come out and get all their work done in the first quarter. That's not how it works. That hasn't how it's worked, at least with the Eagles. Second quarter, let's talk. And I'm inclined, in fact, to jump on a -4 spread right now in the second quarter, because I would anticipate, if you wanted to build a game script, you pretty much can right here and say, all right, Texans +3, Eagles -4, Eagles -3, Texans +3. That's pretty much how things have gone. But we'll start with the Texans just covering, baby, that first quarter. We move to Miles Sanders here. And this one's going to be all about the rushing, simply because, hey, they were already getting cooked on the ground in Houston before Derrick Henry came. Now, all of a sudden, you want me to, believe that it was a one-time thing? Look, the easiest way to get around being sluggish, the easiest way to get around a short week, the easiest way to get around this large 13.5-point spread that you're doomed to carry for 3 days and hear all about how you're going to the Super Bowl and you're the only hope in the city, is to just put your head down, shoulder pad on chest, and pound the shit out of the football. And that's what the Eagles do. Look, the Atlanta game, which we're going to get to once we look at the slate, that's a perfect example of a team that loves to run the football and a position where they should run the football. Same exact spot here. I want to target Miles Sanders first. Also, I want to target Jalen Hurts. This was at 40.5 when I gave it out on the Discord earlier in the week. But hey, you're not on the Discord yet, so you missed that one. You also, you probably missed some other ones like this one last night. Wait a second. We're doing the NFL. Sorry. I had a couple of seconds to burn just to flash it in your brain. Did you just hit another one of those? Yeah, we did. But hold on a second. Jalen Hurts, 2 ways. One, just because design runs, if in fact the Philadelphia Eagles will, I think we're going to go deep on the bench, need to stretch a drive, need to stretch it down on third down, you're going to see Hurts move around, especially if there's some extra pressure on him. Containment is going to be a little more difficult for Houston, as we've seen with lesser skilled quarterbacks on the ground. And then there's also just design plays that have Hurts RPOs and tucking it because there's a better option. And when he gets out there in the open field, you can count it. We move on. Now we go to our favorite here. These have been pretty good here. Now, I know we had a rough one on Monday night with our buddy Cade missing, but overall, Fairbairn here is at even money to get us to 6. 2 field goals, a touchdown, what have you. You're going to get some points for Houston. I think you're going to get some field goal opportunities for Houston. Here's another thing. Their red zone efficiency, at least coming into last week, was pretty good. So if they get down there, and it's just, again, the first quarter, they're hanging. Wouldn't shock me at all if this, honestly, I'm not making some proclamation from the top of the mountain here, but I'm telling you, it would not shock me one bit, the slightest, if the Houston Texans had 2 field goals in the first half and this bet at even money cashes before half. Forget the spread of the game, forget the total. Just look at Fairbairn here and say that's going to cash first half. All right, now let's give you not even a lotto. This is somewhere between, this is far from a Powerball ticket. But again, the running game, somebody is going to score, and it's going to happen often. And I think that if you are going to play a multiple touchdown lotto ticket, this would be the time to do it. So I'm going to give you a pair of guys here that you should be looking at. And again, we're going to go to any time down to multiples. And this is the reason why. Because when I look at multiple touchdowns here, and I'll get it this time, it's the running backs. The running backs are going to have so many chances to just carry. And look, Gainwell and Boston Scott are the 2 guys you want to target. So this is essentially 6 bets in 5 minutes, 7 if you count the free bet I gave you at the top. Gainwell and Scott, you might as well play them a 1/10 of a unit each.
That Super Bowl.
Yeah, it wasn't too long ago. 5 years. Yeah.
More than my Bears. Matt doesn't.
Yo, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Stokastic.com NFL Showdown Strategy Show presented by No House Advantage. I'm Dave Loughran at Lofty_D. Ooh, baby, we got the Philadelphia Eagles, the Houston Texans today. 13.5-point spread out there in Houston. Got the Eagles, got the Houston Texans, got the Phillies, got the Houston Astros. Going to be a fun night. And we're here to talk about it. Along with me, as always, Matt Gajewski at Matt_Gajewski. What's good, brother?
Not much, man. You forgot to mention my Coastal Carolina Chanticleers playing App State tonight as well.
You know what? I did you had asked me to mention that, and it slipped my mind.
Phenomenal sports night. The potential crown of the Sun Belt is on the line as well. So if you don't have Amazon Prime or whatever, you're not watching, or if the Eagles end up blowing out the Texans, you can flip over to that Coastal Carolina game because it should be a banger. But this might not be the most interesting game on paper. You know, we've got a near 2-touchdown spread, but the Eagles have been on a historic run to start the year. And I think anytime you can get a chance to watch this team, at least when it's competitive, you need to do so. And then for DFS purposes, always making games exciting here. And I think Houston can put a little bit up. They priced this slate pretty well. I think it's a lot more interesting than the Cincinnati slate we had on Monday.
Absolutely. We were so wrong about that too.
Yeah, what the heck happened? I mean, like Jamar Chase is out and the Bengals offense completely collapses. I mean, they have other weapons. I don't know what happened there.
I know, man. I'd said this actually in a betting video the following day because I thought the Bengals would at least hang in there. I thought you'd see some points. I know AB liked that to be a high-scoring game as well. I didn't expect them to become so one-dimensional to the point where the only points they scored were basically garbage time.
I don't even know what to say. Like they can't run the ball with Joe Mixon. I think that's partially an offensive line issue, maybe a Mixon issue. they didn't have any success throwing the ball either. And, like we were even wrong on some of the players in that game. Like it was Trent Irwin who was popping up with all those garbage time catches, not Mike Thomas. So it was a rough showdown for me. Hopefully this one will be much better.
Me too. And Joe Mixon, I mean, how much of it at this point, and we're going to get straight into Eagles Houston in a second, but how much of the running game struggling in Cincinnati do you think is Mixon, and how much is the line? Because I think you might just have a lot of shared responsibility at this point.
I agree with you. At first, I thought it was the line.
Me too. I thought it was 100% the line, basically.
And early in the year, some of the returns and statistical data we have suggested it was the line. Like we could go to PFF, look at their run blocking grades, and then we can look at yards generated by the offensive line before your running back gets touched. Those were all very bad, and they've gotten better. Not a ton, like they're still not near the top of the league, but they are showing improvement, which was to be expected. It's kind of a ragtag group of free agents that comprise that offensive line. So with time, you thought there might be more continuity, but as that's happened, Joe Mixon's stats have not gotten any better. So I do agree with you that it's probably some shared responsibility there.
It feels like it, but we move on, fortunately, because my God, this is brutal. I'll say the last thing though. As far as adjusted line yards go, you're looking at offensive line stats at Football Outsiders. Cincinnati's smack right in the middle of the pack. So that's only one stat, of course, understandably so. But when you're comparing like running back yards to adjusted line yards, they're so much worse than any other team. So I think a lot to the line, also a lot to Joe Mixon. So it's something to keep in mind when we talk about the main slate, where Joe Mixon's 6,500 this week and one of the chalkiest running backs in our preliminary run of ownership. So that should be fun. Matt Savoca and I'll break that all down at 11 Eastern marathon matchup show. We got you covered for only 10 games this week, but we'll do this first. And I would be remiss to not mention that we are very happy to have you guys with us. As always, hit that thumbs up as you walk in here. Atone for your sins. Have you not done so yet? Subscribe to the channel. Help us appease the YouTube overlords. You know how it works around here. I joke, but it's true. Hitting the thumbs up, commenting if you're listening after the fact, subscribing, all that stuff goes a really long way for us, and we appreciate you guys for it. Also, if you're listening in podcast, subscribe to the channel, leave a rating or a review, and tell your friends about the strategy show, about the Stokastic channel. All that helps us, and we are grateful. All right, Eagles, Matt, they're laying 13.5 points here. 29.5 point implied total. Now the Texans 15.5 point implied total. As we always do on the strategy show, we'll go team by team and then live before lock, position by position. But I think we just have to start, and I want to ask you a question about something you alluded to just a minute ago. The pricing here. When it comes to pricing, they had to get this right. Otherwise, it just would have been a mess, because you couldn't make it so you could just load up on everyone from the Eagles. Does that force our hand to where we're just going to see a ton of lineups with like Eagles defense and kicker, and then 3 skill players and 1 Houston player?
I think we are going to see some of that, but you mentioned it. Houston's not priced up to the point where I'm just like, all right, I want to run 5 1s. I just want to run all 4 2s. And I certainly do want to be balanced towards the Eagles with their team total, their explosive offense. I think that's what everyone's going to try to do to some degree, is play a lot of Eagles. But the pricing also leaves us the chance to play some underpriced Texans. So in my opinion, it's a really nice slate overall, well priced. It's priced to the point where you have to consider playing 3 Texans, I think, in some builds. So props to DraftKings specifically. They did an awesome job pricing wise. But all that said, like, I don't want to leave off Jalen Hurts. I don't want to leave off AJ Brown, Miles Sanders, the Eagle studs. At the end of the day, with this massive spread and team total, like, don't we want to just be getting to the Eagle studs first and foremost? You would think so. And honestly, seeing what happened with Cincinnati and Cleveland was surprising, but this would be very shocking to see it. This would be insanely surprising to see the same thing happen in this game, in the same order, right? Like Houston comes in and routes them. Anthony Marcus, what's up, Anthony? Said any given Sunday, in this case Thursday, the Eagles can definitely lose this game. All right, any team can lose any game,
The question I would have for you, Anthony, and I'll throw to Matt as well, and I'll provide some insight on this on top of that, is if the Eagles lost this game, how does it happen? And that's where I'm struggling, because they can beat you on the ground. They can beat you through the air. Hurts can beat you with his legs. Their defense is number 2 in defensive DVOA. Again, sometimes these things don't matter. Brandon Cooks, I don't even know if he's going to play. And if he does play, how interested is he going to be? Because he just tweeted those scathing remarks about the Texans organization after he wasn't traded at the 4 p.m. deadline. It would be very difficult. So I'm just trying to figure out if this game were to stay, let's say, competitive or high scoring, or Houston were to win this in a low scoring game, how do they do it?
I think you probably just need crazy turnover luck.
Exactly. Yeah.
Something that just drastically sways the game, because I don't even think an injury is enough. And I hate to talk about injury, but Jalen Hurts goes down. That team is strong. You could win without Hurts in more of like insert game manager of your choice, run the ball, just deliver the ball to AJ Brown and your like playmakers, and they still probably beat Houston. So I think honestly, it's like some crazy fluky turnover type plays where Houston wins, if it happens, which is very unlikely.
Agreed. And the Eagles haven't lost a fumble all year. So I don't know. That's not sustainable, of course, but we'll see. Houston just gave up 314 rushing yards last week. What? I
was so pissed, dude. I was so pissed at that game.
Why?
Why did they not just take every defender not immediately lined up over a receiver and put them in the box? You're facing Malik Willis, who's incompetent. How did they give up that many rushing yards? Aside from there being like a ton of attempts, like what the hell did they do at halftime?
Do you know how many passing yards Willis had?
56?
Like 55 or 56? Yeah.
He's incompetent, and Houston couldn't figure it out.
And think about the pass catchers from Tennessee.
I was floored watching that game. I was so pissed.
And what I don't understand is Lovie Smith is clearly a defensive-minded head coach.
Lovie Smith is an idiot. He won like 3 games with Illinois, and somehow he got a head coaching job. He's
got a sweet beard, though.
He does have a sweet beard, and he's a Bears legend, so I got to give him some props, but the game has passed him by. He's a scapegoat, as sad as it is to say. Like, he's going to get fired. They're going to bring in someone they actually like.
Well, they did the same thing with what was the head coach last year, who I thought actually was doing an okay job. Especially, especially towards what was his name?
I forget the name.
David, wasn't it David something?
I can't remember. But for him to win as many games as he did with that Texans roster, they should have built a statue in front of the stadium, and instead they fired him.
Yeah, and David Culley.
I mean, it wasn't great, but I mean, that roster was, I think, the worst in football by a wide margin, and he was winning some games, which clearly their management wasn't exactly thrilled about. But if you want a coach that actually like maximizes the players on the field, he did that.
I know. And remember, towards the end of the season, they were actually playing pretty well. And we saw Davis Mills with actual improvement, with some maturation, and then right back to the drawing board. I don't really understand it. It's odd to me that you would hire a defensive-minded coach, no less. Like, I would want someone in there that could really fix this offense up and see if Davis Mills has it. But look, he's a holdover quarterback, he's a temporary quarterback. This team, there's I don't know. Outside of Derek Stingley and maybe Petrie, who do they have? Seriously, like, who do they have? And sure, we can throw Damian Pierce in there probably as well. Outside of those guys, who do they have that are guys you go, they got to be here for a long time?
Yeah, they're just in a tough spot where Bill O'Brien ran them into the ground so badly with all the crazy picks he had, just losing all their draft capital for middling players. And I mean, they did get Tunsil, who's solid, but
true.
Ultimate, I mean, he's not worth what they gave up for him. I'm sure you saw like this stuff, what the Dolphins were able to turn those picks into is like Tyreek Hill, Waddle, and unbelievable playmakers. Anyway, they're in an extended rebuild because of where he left that organization. So I think they're just trying to get as many usable pieces for the future while they can. Like, Stingley's awesome. And obviously they're not going to be making plays this year, at least movement towards the playoffs. But in the long run, hopefully they can just keep accumulating players like that.
It all started with that terrible DeAndre Hopkins trade.
That was egregious.
I still remember seeing it. I still remember I was sitting in my office and it came across the screen and I'm like, wait, they gave up Hopkins for David Johnson. And it was somebody else too. I think they didn't give up a first, right?
I believe it was a third, which is still egregious.
Oh, disgusting. What'd you think of Chase Claypool for the Bears' second?
I mean, they just spent like a third on Velus Jones.
I know.
I think it's like, I do personally think they overpaid a little bit, but where the Bears are right now, I think you kind of need to overpay a little bit just like to get him any help whatsoever.
Yeah,
sort
sure.
of like what Jacksonville did with Trevor Lawrence. Like if we got to overpay Christian Kirk, like we can't be trotting out Equinemius St. Brown for Justin Fields. Like we got to do something to get like at least a competent pass catcher on the field. Like N'Keal Harry, please. Like I do think they overpaid, but like they got to do something.
Dante Pettis is like a deep threat, and that's it. Hey, I'll say this though. I think you should be a little excited for Fields. Getsy and Eberflus finally figured out a way to actually create more design runs, run more options. Like he looks more comfortable back there. And you've seen it as far as the last couple of weeks have gone. So I think it could be worse. All right. So let's get into this a little bit. Jalen Hurts has a 50% top play probability in our single game showdown top plays tool, which by the way, 3 days totally free to you guys. If you want to get in, Thursday is the best day to do it because you're getting Thursday, Friday, you're getting Saturday too, which will set you up nicely to use a lot of those tools for Sunday. Links in the description. Mike can throw it into the chat as well. 3 days entirely free, all of our NFL tools. So this tool that we're talking about, if you want to follow along, the boom bust tool, ownership, player projections, all of our projected stats, you name it, everything that we've got. Oh, and the lineup generator as well. Lineup generator is very sick. You can export, up to 20 lineups at a time to CSV. Then you can do it again. Run as many as you want, save, discard as many lineups as you want. All of it free for 3 days, no strings attached. If you don't like it afterwards, you can bounce. If you do, stick around and take advantage of the Discord community as well. But yeah, 50% top play probability. Then you have, and I just want to get your thoughts on pass catchers and quarterback here. Then you have AJ Brown at 12%, Dameon Pierce at 10, Cooks at 7. So really only the top two top play probability guys are on the Eagles, which I guess isn't that surprising. Sanders is around there, Goddard, Devonta Smith, but it's really Jalen Hurts, and then it completely falls off down to 11.6%.
For sure, and he's still underpriced. He should probably have the Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen treatment at this point, and he's still priced like he's Joe Burrow, which is like he needs to be in your lineup. Everything suggests so. Our tools in the back end, he's in. I think at this point he would have to get hurt to not be in the optimal lineup. Basically, our tools are suggesting he's either your top scorer or in the top 6 almost 95% of the time, which is unbelievably high. So with Hurts, I think it's just a question of where you want to play him, not so much should you play him or not. And how do you create builds with him? Because you could certainly play him with AJ Brown. Once you do that, honestly, you might be running into a little bit of a contrarian build just because of that, because they're so expensive. AJ Brown, he's actually, I think, efficiently priced up at his price point. Hurts is not. So then do people decide to go and play Devonta Smith instead? Do they decide to go stars and scrubs and play AJ Brown? Ultimately, I want to use Hurts for sure, but then I want to be creative with how I use him. Do I want to just use AJ Brown? Do I want to use like Goddard and Devonta Smith to save salary? Those are questions I think we need to ask, but it's really hard to play all of them together. So I think you have to make some tough choices with your Hurts lineups.
This is as good a week as any to play some discounted kind of role players in this Eagles offense. I'm going to tell you why, Matt. I could be completely wrong about that, but I want you to hear me out. Short week, traveling to Houston. Understandably, Hurts and the starters came out with like 9.5 minutes left in the fourth quarter in that game where they beat up on the Steelers at the Link. But short week, traveling to Houston, 13.5-point favorites. The Houston Texans run defense has been ghastly this year. I mean, as bad as you can imagine. 5.6 yards per attempt, 10 touchdowns allowed, 186 rushing yards per game. Who cares if they played an overtime game in week 1? That's still terrible. It's 30 yards more per game than the next worst team. Granted, last week didn't help either. I'm not saying Miles Sanders is Derrick Henry, although I am on his over rushing yards prop today. But it wouldn't shock me. And I do love Miles Sanders. I think Miles Sanders can have himself a really big day behind one of the best run blocking lines in the league. But it would not shock me at all if Nick Sirianni decides that he's going to run a little bit more of a rotation in the backfield than he has, because you know that in a spot like this, Gainwell can be fine. Boston Scott can be fine. Short rest. It's a physical position. You're constantly getting hit. But then on the other hand, Sanders only had 9 carries last week. So this could also be a monstrous Sanders game. And then you're saying, what if it does in fact blow out? What if this game does happen to be a rout as the spread would indicate? Then you're getting even more opportunities from some of these other options that, we saw Zach Pascal catch kind of what you would consider almost a garbage time touchdown last week. Very interesting game, because the spread is so much bigger than anything we've seen on Thursday Night Football this year.
For sure. You bring up a great point with, I think, Boston Scott specifically. Kenneth Gainwell's kind of more of a niche back. We know he has that role in the pass game where he'll be used situationally. But Scott, you've seen used between the tackles a lot, kind of like a poor man's Miles Sanders. They do rotate 3 backs. It's balanced heavily towards Sanders. But in the potential game script you laid out where it is a potential route, Scott could see more opportunity without a doubt. And I ran a lot of optimals this morning, both on DraftKings and FanDuel. Rather than getting a lot of Scott in those lineups, you're tending to get more Brevin Jordan and some of the other cheap tight ends like Jordan Akins. So I think even if you're just willing to pay up a little bit, spend that extra $1,000 for Scott, that could make you different. And then we also know the tendency of people playing DFS, not always comfortable with playing multiple backs from the same team. I think if you use Sanders and Scott, that could be a way to be contrarian too. And I don't know if you necessarily feel bad about it because of how bad Houston's been on the ground.
That's a great point. That's a really good point. You could see something where Miles Sanders rips off a 50-yard run down to the 3, and then Boston Scott punches it in. Look, we have to play out everything in our head. I'm just saying that this Houston run defense is so bad. I think you're absolutely right. Exactly. Would you rather be banking on cheap Texans to get, touchdowns through the passing game? Or would you rather bank on the Eagles to put up a lot of points and see touchdowns from everywhere? In week 1, they had touchdowns from 4 different rushers: Gainwell, Sanders, Hurts, Boston Scott. They can do this quite frequently. That is very interesting. The whole, even, Captain Sanders and then Scott in the flex seems to make some sense. He's not expensive at all. He's way cheaper than Kenny Gainwell too. And I know these guys don't have good leverage scores in our tools today. I might go against that a little bit in the event that they happen to run the ball 35 times, which wouldn't shock me at all.
Yeah, I would. The only thing I would say is watch this throughout the day too. We're talking in the morning, obviously. I wouldn't be surprised if by kickoff this changes a little bit here. I mean, what's really propping up the Texans tight ends other than pricing? And right. What I like is that Boston Scott's not drastically more expensive than these guys. And we'll talk about Quez in a little bit here. But for optimals to just be jamming these Texans tight ends, I don't know that I necessarily agree with his ownership right now. I think if the slate were to kick off right now, you would see this flipped a little bit, because everything on Fantasy Cruncher for DraftKings specifically is just jamming these Texans tight ends. And it's a price thing. If you play $800 tight ends or $1,000 tight end Brevin Jordan, you can get all the studs. It's just how comfortable do you feel with that? It's a 3-way tight end rotation between Brevin Jordan, Jordan Akins, and OJ Howard, regardless. It's a 3-way rotation at the running back position for Philly as well. But I think you have a higher likelihood of scoring there with the Philly side of this. And I think it's going to be a little lower owned.
You said exactly what I was. 100%. Where's the touchdown equity on either of these sides? It's clearly the team that has a 30-point implied total. And last week you had Brevin Jordan, Jordan Akins, and OJ Howard have 4, 3, and 2 targets in some order. I think Howard had 3, Akins had 2, Brevin Jordan had 3. That or 4, whatever. That's not encouraging at all. Where not only are you hoping that one of these guys that you're playing gets literally a couple targets, maybe 3, but you're also hoping they find the end zone in the passing game. And that makes it even more disgusting. Davis Mills has 8 touchdowns to 6 interceptions on the season. Right? That is not good.
No, he's regressed.
I'll tell you, if Brandon Cooks is out, normally you'd be like, hey, I like them a whole lot more. And I think naturally you would have to because it's a showdown slate. But how in the world does this offense function today? If that's how does this offense function? Nico Collins is already out. We're talking Chris, and obviously I'm just speculating. It's a wrist. That is why Brandon Cooks didn't practice on Tuesday or Wednesday. I think there's probably a little bit more to that. But you'd be talking about Chris Moore, Philip Dorsett, and Tyron Johnson. It's ugly. It is really ugly.
It's really ugly. That'll flip the build entirely. So I guess if we're talking, Brandon Cooks doesn't play tonight, well, then you're just going to get these cheap Houston Texan receivers jammed. And I think it's going to be the same case where you could gain leverage by playing Boston Scott or Quez Watkins for that matter. Quez Watkins isn't expensive either. No. He's the presumed wide receiver 3. I know he rotates with Pascal a little bit, but I would rather play Quez.
Yeah, Quez has that showdown ability where one catch could go 50 yards for a touchdown. And that's pretty enticing. It's weird too. Quez Watkins played 50% of snaps last week. 70% of snaps last week. He's been scarcely involved, hardly involved. You're talking 1 target basically a game at this point. But could that 1 or 2 targets end up being something big? I think I'm with you on that one. So, and to your point, you're saying you'd rather Quez Watkins over some of these dirt cheap Houston options?
As of right now, for tournaments specifically, if it were to start now and Brandon Cooks played, I think that's what we're presuming. I would rather play Quez than Jordan Akins or these cheap tight ends for Houston at their ownership. If it were flipped and Quez Watkins was the guy popping in all the optimals, I might think differently, but it's not. And then if the Houston pass catchers, the cheap ones, become the best price adjusted plays because Cooks is out or whatever, then I still think Quez Watkins would be your leverage guy there. He's probably coming in under-owned compared to them. And yes, he probably plays a more integral real life role. He's kind of the Deshaun Jackson of the offense, the less targeted Deshaun Jackson, but his speed opens up everything for everybody else. Kind of like the MVS of Green Bay's offense last year. But occasionally when your defense starts slipping and then dedicates more coverage to AJ Brown, he does have that slate breaking ability. So I still think Quez Watkins is viable. He only ran a couple less routes than AJ Brown, 2 less snaps than AJ Brown. Again, he's definitely not going to be targeted anywhere near that degree, but he's on the field a lot and he's really cheap.
Very, very cheap. Yeah. And I wanted to point out a comment. So where was it?
The Cooks punching the wall one?
No, not that one. not that one. It was, here it is. Easy DFS. Speaking in absolutes on a 1-game showdown where Texans win 1 of 7 games. Feels like an easy way to get different is playing the Texans. Well, that's what I asked Anthony and Matt earlier. If that is the case, how do the Texans get it done? That's my question. And I don't think it's 1 of 7 games if the Eagles are minus 800 here. But I don't know. Are we going Davis Mills with who?
I mean, I don't even think the Texans need to win this game to play them in showdown or
exactly
go above their scoring expectation. They're priced to play. So let's think of a lineup theoretically where you jam the Eagles studs. You're playing Hurts, AJ Brown, and then maybe They account for most of the touchdowns in a routing. So Boston Scott fills out your lineup. Then you just want to play like, okay, I want to get the cheap Texans that like fill out the box score. Or maybe it's, you play Miles Sanders, Jalen Hurts, AJ Brown, and then the opposing offense is comprised of just such cheap value. Like Chris Moore ends up with 6 targets, 5 catches for 60 yards. That's going to be a huge boon at his price. So maybe it's just like, all right, I play 2 of these really cheap Texans. They pay off just because they're so cheap. The Texans get pounded and it affords me all the Eagles studs. And that's a GPP winning score.
I guess anything's possible. I mean, we know it is. We know it is. It's just, this isn't even one of those games where you go, yeah, they have Deontay, they have Deontay Johnson, they have George Pickens. They could maybe be okay. It's just like there actually aren't any weapons here. But hey, we'll see. You have to play somebody from Houston, so we're going to talk about that, right? Like if that's the direction you want to take, we're going to get into it for sure. How about the fact that the Eagles defense, not in the captain spot, but the Eagles defense is 7K?
That's great. That's what they should be. Someone tweeted about that last week in a potential blowout spot. I mean, fantastic job. Like now you at least have to consider it. There's opportunity costs with the Eagles defense for the first time. Like phenomenal job pricing by DraftKings. Got to give them credit.
And I think they should still be very much in play.
For sure. They're not going to be owned.
They're what? 4% at captain. Well, we actually have them with big negative leverage on this one. All right.
I think that's
like no thing. Ownership. That's 22% total ownership. So that you're right. That price makes a difference.
I don't buy they're even going to be that owned. Like they're 200 less than Brandon Cooks, assuming he plays. If I would have told you before the year, the Eagles would come in 200 less than Brandon Cooks, you probably would have said I was crazy.
Probably. But I mean, what if I told you that the Eagles are averaging more fantasy points than Brandon Cooks this year?
Well, you bring up a good point there. That's a good point.
That's crazy.
Well,
like the Eagles are averaging 2 fewer fantasy points, the defense, than Davis Mills is this year.
Man, I don't even know what to say.
It's insane.
There's gonna be volume for Houston. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe. We saw Houston put up some numbers against Vegas. They put up 20, but that's a horrible defense. We saw them put up 24 against the Chargers. That defense is underwhelmed. They have had a couple games where they've scored, right? Like 4 of 7 games, they've gone 20 plus points. That you can work with that for sure in a showdown slate. There's no doubt about it. The 15.5 point implied total isn't exactly encouraging, but yeah. And any other Eagles players? I think we covered a lot here. Anyone else specifically that you want to talk about that makes for an interesting play tonight?
Yeah, just for your crazy, really deep guys, like other players you're seeing getting snaps. You got Britton Covey. He's kind of like a punt return specialist. Had 4 snaps in their most recent game. They do use 12 personnel a lot. When they're doing that, it's mainly Jack Stoll, who's basically just a blocker out there, but he plays a lot. So, if he like lucks his way into a touchdown, that could be useful. Grant Calcaterra had 12 snaps, maybe in like blowout situations. You see more of him. He's like a poor man's Dallas Goedert. He's a receiving tight end. He split out wide and in the slot quite a bit in college. So he'll only play a lot if this game gets out of hand. But just names to mention, as we talked about really throughout the show at this point, I would rather play some of the Houston value or the more consistent Eagles like Scott or Quez Watkins than these guys. But if you're playing the Millie Maker, they're names you need to know.
720 Red Dog. Lothy's an Eagles fan. The bias here. What am I supposed to say? What? What am I supposed to say? And I'm not biased in that respect. I'm the biggest Philadelphia pessimist you're ever going to meet. But I'm also objective in a situation like this. I mean, my God, they're 2 touchdown favorites. What am I supposed to say, Red Dog? Yeah, I think this is a real trap game. The Eagles come out flat, lose this one by double digits. I don't know. If you think that, definitely bet the Houston money line, because that'll carry you over for a few weeks. No doubt about it. Now, all right. I think we hit on everything for the Birds. We'll get to the Texans. Before we do, though, shout out to our sponsor, No House Advantage. Mike, can you pull up how much of that No House Advantage contest is filled right now? Matt, they're getting people over there, but in doing so too, and it's an awesome format, but in doing so, the overlay has been off the charts with No House Advantage.
That is the number one thing you should be considering when you're entering DFS contests. I know most of you are familiar with like FanDuel, DraftKings, they're familiar platforms. But if you actually want to maximize your returns, overlay is the single best thing you can target. The contests are sized for a specific amount of people. And when that doesn't fill, the prize pool doesn't change. It's still paying out as if that design number of people are in the contest. Huge. And yes, you should be going there first and foremost when you're playing DFS because of it. And better yet, we have tools for it. So it's not like this is some foreign platform that's brand new. It's taking a lot of time out of your day. We have tools designed to exploit these contests. So even if you're new to it and you just want to say, I want to try it out, reference the tools. They're huge.
Yeah, massive. Like we have the lineup generator for free for No House Advantage. We have the No House Advantage projections. What is it, like 198 out of 1,600 filled right now? Massive overlay. And it's not just because it's the morning. This will overlay. They always do. And listen, the prizes, you're not getting milli makers, but the prizes are nice, like 10K, Sunday slate, 15, 20K up top. So very, very cool stuff over there. Up to $50 first match deposit bonus. All of the tools are free. It's Stokastic that you can use. No House Advantage has a multi-lineup generator themselves too, where you can put the props in you like the most, and it'll generate as many lineups as you want. All you're doing is making lineups like you would anywhere else. You're using players, except it's props. There's no juice. It's just the over or the under. And the ones you like the most get the most points when you put them at the top. The ones at the bottom you're least confident in, they get the fewest points. That's how the scoring works. There's no salary. It's just props, and they're static. They don't change throughout the week. So you can really take advantage of good spots that other people are missing. No House Advantage, man. The money over there right now with all of the overlay, it's clearly the biggest reason to get there, outside of the fact that it's a nice format, and they've done a lot to make that site a whole lot better recently. You can also test your skills versus the house. 20 extra entry if you hit on all of your picks. So they got a ton. NFL, MLB, NBA, PGA, MMA, NASCAR. Use the link in the description. Use the link in chat that Mike can throw in there right now. Sign up using that link. Get up to a $50 first match deposit bonus. Use the tools. Take advantage of the insane. You're going to have contests that don't fill to 50%. Think about that. And if that's not enough to get you over there to build up a bankroll, do whatever you want with it after that, then I don't know what to tell you. No House Advantage, sponsor of the NFL Strategy Show. All right, Houston. Let's start with Davis Mills then. How do we want to attack a guy like Davis Mills today, who he's not cheap. Like, he's not expensive, but he's pretty much the same price we've seen a lot of quarterbacks on Thursday night football games.
Yeah, I was surprised to see this. It's like you've got Hurts severely underpriced. Mills a bit overpriced. So the dynamic pricing is better on tonight's slate, specifically with the defense and some of the pass catchers. Really makes you think on some of these guys, but Davis Mills is not one of them. I think he's sheerly your pay up to be contrarian. And at some point you have to ask yourself, like, what's the likelihood of his success versus ownership? And based on our tools, he's still coming in a bit over-owned compared to some other plays on the slate. So I think even though intuition says he's a guy you should be light on, I still think our tools reflecting the same thing suggest maybe we should consider leaving Davis Mills out of our lineup and just playing the Eagles studs instead.
I think if I'm going anywhere here in terms of the higher priced players for Houston, Dameon Pierce just seems to make the most sense. I know he struggled last week against a good, big Tennessee defensive front, but Dameon Pierce gets just a shit ton of work. And clearly this could go, Dameon Pierce, clearly this could go against him. But you're also talking about a guy, and I had a feeling this was going to happen. I didn't know when, but it was my suspicion that soon we'd see him get more involved in the passing game as well. Now, over the last 4 games, Matt, they had a bye with mixed in between that and week 6. 6 targets, 5 targets, 4 targets, 5 targets, which means if you're talking about opportunities, total looks for Dameon Pierce over the last 4 games, 20, 24, 31 in that win against Jacksonville, and 20. So he has 20 plus looks in all 4 games. Yes, this game script likely works against him, but if he's involved as a pass catcher, and if their only hope is to try and run the football, where the Eagles, their one weakness defensively would be the run. I wouldn't say a weakness, but it's definitely weaker than the secondary. And Dameon Pierce is definitely one of the only ways they can move the football. I know it's not like he isn't going to have ownership today, but I think Dameon Pierce could be one of the ways that you get to Houston and you feel kind of good about it. But like you said, that means that you have to forego one of the higher priced Eagles as well. So there is a trade-off.
Yeah, I like Pierce. He's my favorite Texan in a vacuum. His pass game role has been awesome. He's averaging 5 targets per game over the last 4. It hasn't come with much efficiency, but that's still giving you a good floor for DFS purposes. And then his volume on the ground is also excellent. So even without efficiency, he's still putting up a high enough raw score where maybe he's just the Houston Texan you want regardless of price, because he ends up being the highest scorer. So I think there's plenty of ways to build with him. I think you can be creative too. If you use somebody like Boston Scott, you shouldn't have too much trouble playing him, Hurts, and maybe 1 or 2 other studs in your lineup. So right now, with Cooks being uncertain for this game, I think Pierce would be the guy you rank number 1 just in a vacuum on Houston.
I am a little surprised, though, that Pierce right now is getting the 2nd highest captain ownership. You look at our ownership for this slate, you look at the top plays tool, Hurts is at 20%, Pierce 14% captain ownership. We still have him with a positive leverage score because we have him with the 3rd highest top play probability, and 10% optimal captain optimal probability. But man, 14% in the captain for Pierce. That's a lot.
If that's what it ends up being today, I will be fading him in the captain for sure. Put it,
no doubt.
Put him in the flex.
I'm with you there. I want him in the flex because, like, is it doable that he rips off a long touchdown or 2? That's what you need. Early in the game, Dameon Pierce comes out, rips off a long touchdown, and we've seen him do it. It's not out of the realm of possibilities at all. But if that case, then Jalen Hurts is going to throw more. Do you think they're going to limit Jalen Hurts rushing attempts in a game like this on short rest on the road, big favorites?
Maybe a little bit. I think you'd be incentivized to do that. Bye weeks don't come around enough. Like, these teams can certainly use a second bye week. When you can take these spots, I think you definitely do. But I don't think it's like something they come into the game doing right away. I think once you're up by maybe 2 scores or something, then you probably take that approach and be a little more conservative with Jalen Hurts. But you got to get there to begin with.
Right. So, if you're not up by 2 scores, you're playing Jalen Hurts the same way you always would. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. So I think it's more of a function of the spread in the game. If it plays to it, you probably see a little less rushing for Hurts. So even then, though, like, a little less rushing for Hurts, what are our alternatives, like Davis Mills?
Right. I mean, Hurts is still the best play. There's no question about it.
Yeah.
If anything, the alternatives are going to more, secondary type running backs for the Eagles.
Boston Scott, baby. Boston Scott.
It's going to be a Boston Scott. I'll never forget the game. I believe it was against the Giants. Showdown slate. Dude solo ships the 300K on DraftKings with Boston Scott at the captain position. And Boston Scott wasn't owned, let alone in the captain spot. He just wasn't owned at all.
I remember that slate.
You remember that? Yeah.
If I remember correctly, he wasn't really in the rotation the week before.
No, he wasn't. I think Sanders got hurt. And then this guy ended up having Boston Scott and whoever else. It might have been like Wendell Smallwood. I don't even know who it was at the time. I think he had both backup running backs in the lineup and one of them a captain.
Jordan Howard, Wendell Smallwood, something like that.
Yeah, it was one of those guys for sure.
Wendell Smallwood, what a name drop.
Yeah, how about him? Where'd he go to school?
West Virginia.
All right. We talked a lot about the tight end rotation, but we got to dig a little bit deeper into pass catchers for Houston because they're still an integral part of this slate, no matter what the total looks like, or no matter what their total, no matter what the spread looks like. So if we assume that Brandon Cooks is active, that means you're getting Brandon Cooks, and no Nico Collins, of course, he's already out. So you're talking Brandon Cooks. You're talking Chris Moore, who is completely inept last week, despite 63% of snaps. Philip Dorsett. I mean, no, Tyron Johnson played 9% because they don't have Tyler Johnson anymore. That's who we're dealing with tonight.
I think it would be 1 Cooks, obviously, 2 Dorsett, 3 Chris Moore playing in the slot. Is that how you see the configuration lining up?
I do. I just don't know. I mean, obviously, Brandon Cooks is your top option here, but he's been pretty pedestrian. And the thing that I don't love, I wanted to get your take on this. Outside of the first 2 weeks of the season, one of them was an overtime game. His volume of targets you would think would be a lot higher for a guy on a team that is completely devoid of weapons. But I think the biggest difference probably from last year to this year is that Lovie Smith is absolutely intent on giving Damian Pierce as many carries as possible, regardless of the game script.
It's insane, honestly, but they're comfortable losing games. Brandon Cooks clearly isn't happy with it. His target share is not great. It's 23% on a team this bad. Like you need 28, 29% target share for consistent fantasy success. So you're absolutely right. It hasn't been consistent with Brandon Cooks. And if he plays, I don't anticipate it getting any better. The only thing I'll say here is he's priced well, 7,200. That's for a wide receiver 1 on a team. That's awesome. Like T Higgins was 8K in our most recent slate, and he's 200 more than the Philly defense. So the price makes you think about it. He looks great in our tools. And I think it comes down to pricing specifically. If he's out there, like I'm having a hard time not playing him just because that price is like, he's a reliable player in the sense that we know he's out there. He's the number 1 target. Yes, it's been bad, but like, do I want to play him or do I want to go down and play Brevin Jordan? I think I can make enough sacrifices to get to Cooks.
Yeah. Okay. What about Dorsett and Moore?
These guys I would have more interest in if Cooks sits. Otherwise, they're priced in a range where I think I broke down my specific approach. I'm going to try to get to the ancillary Eagles receivers, but I'll certainly have builds where, there's the occasional, like really cheap guy. I would rather play them than the tight ends. I'll say that. But overall, targets haven't been consistent for these guys. I mean, they're bad players. They're not even like youthful pieces that might break out. Like Philip Dorsett, first round bust. He's bouncing around the league, multiple teams right now. Chris Moore, like he's a special teamer or a practice squad player. We're not even talking about like youthful potential breakouts. These guys just suck and they're not getting better.
I just really wouldn't be surprised if Brandon Cooks is not on the field tonight.
Like, okay, let's talk about if he is for a second, because like Dorsett.
Can I wait? Hold on real quick, Matt. Do you not think there has to be some internal, I don't want to say disciplinary action, but the fact that he's like, I'm tired of covering up the lies, or I'm tired of like lying for this organization is basically what he's, I don't know. It seems odd that 2 days later he would be on the field in uniform, getting the same opportunities that he did the weeks previous.
Yeah, I have no idea. If he's out, then Dorsett obviously becomes a much better play. He's 4K. So, I mean, with Cooks, he's a terrible play. Without him, he's probably the wide receiver 1 on this team. But I mean, but like Brandon Cooks signed the contract. Like you're getting paid. The reason he couldn't get traded is because he has so much guaranteed money.
Right.
Like, but tough. It must be real tough to be Brandon Cooks.
Yeah. Oh, listen, I don't feel bad for the guy. Nothing pisses me off more than these guys that take the money. They take a huge contract, know that they're not going to a good team. Like, okay, sure. Did you think they would be as bad as they were right now when you signed? I don't know. Maybe not. But what did you expect? What did you expect?
Honestly, I don't know. But, you bring up a really, like on the injury report itself, he's listed with the wrist, but it also says not injury related, personal.
Yeah.
DNP.
He's pissed.
This could be a Cam Akers situation.
Absolutely. Where it's just like, hey, you're going to sit.
And then, like, they're not winning games anyway.
Ben Simmons situation, too. Like, no, we're not going to. It's true. Hey, we're not going to trade you. Fuck off, pal. You can watch from home. And we're going to dock your pay.
then I'm sure they'd be fine with that. Save the money.
Wide receivers are insane divas.
That is true. If Cooks doesn't play, I would have some interest in Chris Moore. I would also have some interest in Tyron Johnson, whose skill set is not all too dissimilar from Cooks himself. Tyron Johnson's a burner, pure burner. He's had success in the preseason. Not that he's like an NFL caliber player by any means, but like he's definitely like a poor man's skill set like that. Burner downfield. I think he slides right into that role. Probably not targeted as heavily, but he's the stone man. I'd have a lot of interest in him specifically.
You'd have to. They're going to have to throw to somebody. And with these players so cheap, for all we know, it's entirely possible, Matt, that like from one of these guys, you mentioned Tyron Johnson. You look at him at $200. So Stoneman, like you said, he could have 4 for 30, and that 7 points gets you to a lot of really other really good players, and it's enough.
Absolutely. And, like Tyron Johnson's kind of built like Quez Watkins. I don't know if Davis Mills is capable of delivering him a deep threat, but he has that ability for sure.
Yeah. Boy, this could get so ugly.
This is a great GPP
it's
slate.
Fun.
So this, I think tonight, it is more imperative than ever to watch live before lock, because we'll get this news. You and I don't have it right now. We're trying to speculate best we can, but once the news is locked in concrete and we have our tools updated for the final run, you'll know where ownership is going, and it's all going to be educated guesses. So if we see that Chris Moore comes in really high ownership or whatever it may be, I'm going to try to pivot to some of these other receivers because it is so uncertain. Yeah. Or just going to the Eagles guys. Like we talked about Boston Scott Quez. We know they're going to be on the field to some degree.
Yeah, absolutely. They're going to be out there. All right. You want to build a lineup? You want to see what we can come up with now that we've worked through all this?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Before we do, though, pretty insane offer. So you guys have heard us talk a lot about BetMGM because there's always good offers there. And, we're trying to get them out. If there's good offers out there, we want to let you guys know about them. Okay. So how about this? Remember before it was you bet $10, you get to $200 on return when you bet an NBA game. How about this one? Now you get 2 free months of Stokastic Plus Platinum and up to $1,000 risk-free bet when you sign up, make a deposit, and place your first wager on anything at BetMGM. The link's in the description. The link is in the chat as well. 2 free months of Stokastic Plus Platinum. It's $120 a month if you're paying out of pocket. I don't really know what else. I don't have a read for this, and I'm not reading. I'm not reading this one because there's no reason to try and incentivize or convince anybody to do this. If you're not a premium sub at Stokastic, and if you haven't signed up at BetMGM yet, you sign up, you make a deposit of $10 or more, and you're getting 2 free months of Stokastic Plus Platinum. All you have to do, you create a free Stokastic membership if you don't have one yet. There's a form. It's super easy. This is just so we know who to contact. And log in if you've already done that. Click the large BetMGM button that appears after registering or logging in, right? Very simple. You'll see the whole process. I don't even know I'm reading this. Then complete the necessary steps with MGM, right? You're setting up an MGM account, depositing at least $10, and make your first paid bet. That's it. That's it. And then once that bet settles, boom, 2 free months of Stokastic, baby. Matt, 2 free months of Stokastic Plus Platinum just for signing up at a sports book and having fun betting. Come on.
That's a no-brainer. There's nothing else to say. No-brainer.
Nope. Yeah, that I should have said that in the beginning. It is a clear no-brainer. So yeah, once you complete the steps, you'll get an email from MGM with instructions on how to get the 2 free months. So that's it, baby. Check it out. And we'd love to have you come join the family. Check it out. 2 free months, $240 value there. Signing up, putting $10 on BetMGM. Link in the description and the pinned comment. Ooh, that's a juicy one. And it's probably going to only be 1 month soon. Actually, I know it is. We're in the process of doing that, but it takes a while. So if you want to get the 2 months, do it now before it comes down to 1 month. All right, let's build a lineup and hit that thumbs up. Let's get to 100 thumbs up here. 85 likes with the 500 people watching. What's going on, my friends? I know it's in the morning. I know it's early on the West Coast for those of you, but take a second. 15 of you out there must be there to get us over 100. All right, Matt, let's do the $50 entry. I think it's like 1,300 entries. $50. I think it's like 5-6K up top. So we won't go large field millie. We'll do a GPP, single entry, and see what we come up with. And then on Live Before Lock, we'll do a millie. What do you want to go with it, Captain?
I kind of want to try building one with Miles Sanders and see what we can do.
You will never in your life get an argument from me on that.
I love Miles Sanders.
Me too, man. Me too. All right, let me go. You know what? We said we want to get a little bit different. I don't think it's that crazy. I'm going Boston Scott.
You make it easy for me. That's where I was going to go anyway. I thought you were going to pick Hurts. I'm going to pick Hurts now.
Fair enough. So let's have a little fun here. I don't think Cooks is playing. Let me put Tyron Johnson in there. What does that do for us? If we have Boston Scott and Tyron Johnson, we have 10-3 per player remaining over the next year. This could be a millie maker lineup in all seriousness.
If you do this, you can play anybody.
Mm-hmm.
You can play AJ Brown, you can play Davis Mills, Dameon Pierce, you can literally play anybody you want. So I think we just play AJ Brown.
AJ Brown, yeah, I like it. And then I'm going to go Dameon Pierce. So that gives us 2 running backs, but it also gives us Hurts with the AJ Brown connection. Tyron Johnson, we only need a few points from, and then hopefully Dameon Pierce continues to get a lot of value. I'm a fan.
Me too. In this line, like I was going to suggest Dallas Goedert, but you throw him in there, like there's just no reason to do that. We have so much salary left. We've already been contrarian enough. Just makes sense at this point to jam AJ Brown and Dameon Pierce.
Yeah, man. Hey, fun show as always, dude.
Good game tonight, man. I can't wait to watch your Eagles. Going to have Coastal Carolina on my second screen, and it's going to be a 6 sports night. It's a great sports weekend too. So many good games across the next 4 days.
No question. Yeah, I got the 2 TVs set up in the basement on the wall. One of them going to be Phillies. One of them going to be Eagles. Going to sit back, maybe have a couple beers, and hopefully not hate the day after all is said and done. Phillies, Flyers, and Sixers all lost last night. So we had the trifecta. Let's break out of that today. Hey, good luck to all you guys. I'll be back at 11 for the Marathon Matchup Show. Coming up next is the NBA Strategy Show. You got Live Before Lock tonight for football, NBA Deeper Dive Live Before Lock. Just a ton of shit happening on the channel. And if you want all your betting picks, go to the Odd Shopper channel. We got you covered for literally everything, man. All the way down to esports, but Matt has you for college. I got you for NFL. So does everyone else. Eric for NBA. The list goes on. Follow Matt at Matt_Gajewski, me at Laffy_D. And thank you. Well over 100 likes. Shout out to Mike for producing this one as well. Peace.